Again, it's now 1:30 and we have our next item, our next presentation is titled Support for Parents. This is really, really important for us. And we are going back to Megan, who's been a big contributor with us today, and also Kirsty Edwards, our Arts Therapy Projects Manager. And they are going to be in conversation with Rebecca and her mother Edda, I hope. So there's 4 people in this conversation, and it's all about Rebecca really and what she's experienced. And thank you so much, Rebecca. I see you now. I didn't know what you looked like. And thank you, Edda. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and speaking like this about your experience of art therapy and the journey that you've been along. Thank you so much. So I'll hand over to Kirsty, I think, to start things off, if that's all right, Kirsty.
Absolutely. Hi. So as I was saying earlier in my presentation, it's been so important throughout Teapot's history to make sure that the family is supported as well. And Rebecca recently very kindly and Edda very kindly shared their story with me. And I really thought that was an excellent example of what art therapy can do, the power of it really. So I'd love for them to have a wee chat and share their story. And then Megan is going to share some kind of tips and advice on how parents can support their young people at home as well through kind of therapeutic art and art therapy. So Rebecca, I wasn't sure if you wanted to start.
Hiya, can you hear me all right?
All good.
Yeah, okay. Do you want me just to do like a wee general?
Yeah, that would be grand. Yeah, just sharing whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, of course. So I'm 19 at the moment, and my name's Rebecca, so it's nice to meet you all. And I was involved with Teapot Trust a few years back. I worked with somebody very closely for a good 2 years. I was referred by my rheumatology department by the hospital at Sick Kids Edinburgh, and they were the ones that referred me because I was dealing with a diagnosis of a type of arthritis and just a few other things, and my mental health was really affected by my physical well-being. So I got referred there, and from there I had a few sessions with just a psychologist to kind of just what I needed. Then I was very lucky to meet a woman named Emily, who was an art therapist, and from there we worked like closely together. Just either it wasn't just always art therapy. Luckily, I found a very good understanding and bond with this woman. Like that's a very important thing. So it wasn't just art therapy, but it was focused around that we could do, you know, talk about these things, have these materials around, and I found it really helpful at the start that wasn't the pressure of having to tell your story in words. You could kind of express it through like any kind of arty materials you wanted, and I know that helped me build a bond with her to then further on later on not need so much to do that, like focus on the art kind of side of things. But for me it was a lifesaver. I don't know where I would be without it, you know. And I said to Kirsty when I spoke to her last week, you know, I'm kind of living proof of this does really work. It was hard work, don't get me wrong, but working alongside Emily and the hospital, it really brought me to the person I am now. And, you know, I would like to just help as much as possible, give something back, because as I said, the Teapot Trust were really there for me in a time of need. So
thanks, Rebecca. And Edda, from your sort of perspective, how would you sort of describe your experience with Rebecca's art therapy?
Hi, and nice to meet you all. I would like to give you just a very brief history of what came before we got there, because that's maybe quite a crucial thing. And the reason Rebecca needed Teapot Trust so much at the time was because we had been battling for 2 years, trying to get help down in south of England where we were living at the time. And because she was coming into teenage years and being in lots of ways a typical teenager, growing a lot and developing and everything, we always got the same answers. We got the answers that, oh, this is just teenage problems, she will grow out of it. And as a mother, you can only take so much of that, because you know your child and you know when they're making up things or when they're trying to get out of things and all these kind of traditional things for kids and teenagers. But there was something else there, and she was in excruciatingly pain in her joints at various times, so much so that her 100% attendance in school started to drop when she was around 12, 13, and then very steadily in the beginning it dropped further and further, and we got very little understanding, neither from school or from GPs. So this was kind of stubbornness in me. I kept fighting to get to speak to somebody else, and we got to speak to other people, but nobody actually investigated anything, and nobody thought of her mental health. Nobody thought that this kid was in a dire situation, down spiral situation. And as it happened, we moved to Scotland 2 years after we started this kind of hunt for help. And to get into sick kids, I ended up having to go to a private doctor. Then through that route got us into rheumatology. And it's quite sad to say that that had to happen, because not everybody can do that. But we got in there, and we got fantastic rheumatologists, and she immediately set everything in motion. Within 3 months, Rebecca was not only diagnosed, but he was also on medication. She had been taken into hospital purely to make her rest, because during this period, Rebecca wasn't sleeping because of pain. In the end, her dad had to go into a spare room, and I slept with Rebecca to help her turn at night. Just to give you an idea what her condition had become. And along the side, I could see it slowly affecting her mental health. And the problem with when you start to affect her mental health, what do you do as a parent? You can hug her forever, and you can stay with her forever. And we did meditation, we did everything in our power to get her, for example, to sleep, to relax her, but without mollycoddling her, because that wasn't good either. So I was pushing hard for her to go to school. And that's one of the things that I think is very important for Teapot Trust, is maybe to hear our aspect of the school. Because before she got any therapy or anything, we had to speak to her guidance teacher at high school and say, look, there is something wrong. We don't know what it is. We're not getting any help. I'm sorry, but she will not be turning up at school every day. Because when she's crying with pain in the morning, I could not push her any longer to go to school. So we were lucky. Again, luck is our story. We got a guidance teacher that actually listened, who actually believed. And she saw that Rebecca's parents were very engaged. And she told us later that that was a crucial thing. She believed us because we were very engaged with Rebecca, and Rebecca was trying to come in to school as much as she could. And she helped us tremendously. And she suggested we would get help from CAMS, but CAMS wasn't quite what she needed. So talk about fight and flight methods, whilst she was in so much pain that she couldn't really cope even with the session. Anyway, then our rheumatologist suggests that she will be assessed by psychologists, as Rebecca told you, and the rest is history. She went into treatment, she got medication, she got physiotherapy, she got hydrotherapy, and then art therapy on top of it. But my belief is that we would still be there had she not got the art therapy, because she would still struggle, because with so much pain for so long, our mental health keeps going downhill. Had that not been helped on that side, I think physically she might not have recovered quite so quickly. I'm not saying this on any scientific ground, just as a parent watching the change when she started to get these sessions. And I think because we had no help, so that being believed, being put forward immediately made not us parents more positive, but Rebecca got a light in end of the tunnel that there might actually be help there. Because in her mind, I think she had started to focus more on the mental health than she had started to focus on the physical health, because it took a while to get a treatment from the hospital to work. But in the meantime, Emily kept her going. There was hard work to get her to Emily in the beginning, because this was a major thing. We talked about in a meeting with Kirsty the other day that would it have been the same had she been online? And probably had she not had this history I've just told you. But because of the history, Rebecca hadn't been out of the house for a good year when this happened, other than me taking out for a drive to get her to get fresh air and see something else than the four walls of our house. But anyway, she had to get out to go and see Emily. And that was a big part of it, to having to go to a place, to have to meet up with the therapist. And again, she got on really well with it from the beginning, but she was so exhausted after each session that she always fell asleep in the car on the way home. But then very gradually over the months, I started to see a change in her. I started to see the old, lively, jolly, cheeky Rebecca that had completely disappeared. And Rebecca was very sporty, very active, and all of that had gone out of her life. And it was like somebody had switched the light switch off, and her whole light in her personality had disappeared. And I could see that coming on very, very slowly through these sessions with Emily. Yes, it probably also did that she was on tremendous amount of painkillers, and she kind of had a little break from all the pain, and she was on injections for the conditions she had. But I could see that mentally she was coming, and as soon as she was mentally stronger, she could start to fight the rest. But because she was getting so low and so anxious, then she couldn't really fight this disease. And all she wanted to do is just go and sleep it off, which of course didn't work, because she was meant to exercise, she was meant to be active. So all this worked together. And I have to say, from a parent's point of view, I was exhausted by many of times through this, but nothing compared to her. But what started to help me most was probably the meetings that a representative or rheumatology department, guidance teacher from school, art therapist, and then her social worker in school who took her out once a week. When they met, I just felt this massive sense of relief, because everybody knew now what was going on. I didn't have to go from one to another, to another, to another to explain, which was the story of our life down in England. But I was so taken aback by this suggestion that we would all meet up that I thought, wow, this is fantastic. And Emily could explain as much as she was allowed to say. She had had a conversation with Rebecca before the meeting and said, you know, do you mind me saying so and so? And we all communicated. And I just sat and listened to them talking about my child and all the things that they were willing to put into this treatment. And they met every 3 months. And that helped it tremendously. And I absolutely believe in what you're doing. And we have seen it, a huge success story. If I could see a photograph of Rebecca just 2 years ago, you wouldn't recognize her as the same person today. Not only that, she has come out of it being a little bit of a, she's turned into a bit of a therapist herself, because she's passing all this on her friends that are struggling with this, that, and the other. And she said, yeah, I was told this, I was taught this. And she passes it on. So it's not just helping her, it's actually helping her friends, because they're very openly talking about their mental health. And that, I think, is also really important, to get these young people to talk about mental health as they talk about their physical health. You know, we know girls today talk about periods like it's nothing. When I was a kid, nobody wanted to talk about periods. this is what I want to happen with the mental health, is that it is like talking about what you're going to have for dinner tonight. We talk about our mental health in a natural, normal way. And when Rebecca is talking to her friends, whom I know, and I know how they talk together, it is so healthy. But that's partially because of her sessions and her experience with her so professional and kind treatment she got from Teapot Trust and the ongoing support, which lasted for 2 years, and that's a long time. So I can say nothing but thank you. And I could tell you, I could be here all day talking about this, because when you have such an experience as we have had, but Rebecca actually is the best one to talk about it, because she went through it. I was watching and supporting. So if that is any help.
That's fantastic. No, thank you so much to you both, because I know it's not easy sharing stories like this, so thank you. It's really, really powerful. We're going to have a wee chat with Megan now to see your thoughts and sort of from an art therapist perspective. And then if you guys are happy at the end to maybe take a few questions, would that be okay? Perfect. Great. I'll pass over to you, Megan.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk a bit about some of the ways you could support a child who's having art therapy or trying some art therapy techniques at home. So I think one of the things that Edda touched upon was how tired Rebecca was after some of the first sessions. I think it's something that's really important for parents to bear in mind, whether it's online sessions or in-person sessions, is that afterwards it can, you know, be quite exhausting, bring all these emotions, trying new things. So it's something to bear in mind for afterwards, is that they might be tired, they might be a bit grumpy. So it's, and that's maybe not a reflection of the session going badly, it might just be that that's an exhausting experience. And to do sharing artwork as well. So, you know, that in art therapy, we protect the artwork, it's confidential. So for parents, that can be quite frustrating, because you want to see what they're making and what's happening in the sessions. And it's really up to your child whether they want to share that with you or not. And I think especially online now, we don't keep the artwork, so it would be in your house with you. So it's really up to you to protect that confidentiality for your child. So they might say they don't want to share something with you, and it's important to respect that. I think in terms of trying some art therapy techniques at home, we've got lots of videos on the website and things that you can try. Some of the guidance would be things like making a space for artwork, so maybe having a quiet area, making sure you have materials available, and avoid giving direction as much as possible. So instead of saying, why don't we draw this, really see if your child comes up with something themselves to draw, and give that space for them to be creative. And it might be doing something like one of the warm-ups, like the squiggle game that we played before, to get it started, and then maybe you could step back and let them start to express themselves. And then when we're discussing what they've made, you might want to think about being specific. So rather than just saying something like, that's lovely, that's really good, it's nice to think about something specific. So you might pick out a colour or a certain element and ask about that, and really encourage a discussion about why they've chosen that, what that colour means to them. Maybe it reminds them of something, maybe there's a story they could tell from that image, rather than just complimenting, saying that's lovely and then moving on. And I think really one of the most important things is to let it be. So if a child finishes and says that's done, not making too many suggestions. And I think we get tempted to be almost, to try and encourage and say, why don't you add a bit more? But that's really the child taking ownership of their artwork. If they say it's finished, then it's finished. And I've got a little story I can share with that a child told me, and they said that the reason that they love doing artwork is because they decide what's perfect. And in every other element of life, other people decide what's right and wrong and what's perfect. And that makes them very frustrated. And this child said to me that the reason they like doing art and art therapy is that they get to make that decision. So they make their artwork, they decide it's perfect, and no one else tells them that that's wrong. No one says, no, it's not, you could do something else. So I think that's a really powerful thing for a child to experience. And that could just be whilst they're sitting doodling at home. You can try some of our techniques that we have on the website. So we have things like emotions cards, creating a visual journal, which is a nice one to do over a period of time, especially now that we're spending time at home quite a lot still. It'd be a good opportunity to try some things together. And also you might want to try and do some artwork with your child as well. So that's a communal experience, something that you can do together and explore together, because you might find out something as well you've not thought of, and a new way of looking at something. I think that's
fantastic. Thank you. Well, I wondered if before we open up to sort of wider questions, if between the three of you there was anything you wanted to ask each other or maybe pick up on and discuss.
I tell you what, just to do with what you've just mentioned there, Megan, is that we've always been very creative family, and Rebecca, from very young age, there was always a huge space of crafty stuff that she could use whenever she wanted. But the strange thing was, during the time she started to go downhill, she did less and less of it.
Mm.
And so when I was encouraged her to do some of that, she didn't have the energy to do it. She didn't have the feeling of this creativeness that she'd always had. And it sort of died out in the end. But there was the point I want to make also, it is so good to have somebody else to get involved and not be the person who is trying every day from morning to night, and then you're sometimes during the night as well, is to have that other person. She was doing, in a way, lots of the same things that we had been doing at home, but in a more professional way, which meant they had more of a path, whilst we were doing it sort of randomly. And she managed to get Rebecca back into creativity through the sessions. But what's more, there was an artist hidden there. And this has then kind of developed Rebecca into, she's actually studying an artistic thing. So when I was doing what you said, kind of encouraging her and say, it's great and all this kind of thing, you try to be always positive. Or I suggested to her teachers, for example, she was struggling to answer questions in school. I said, can you ask her to draw it? Oh yeah, that's a good idea, but they never did it. And then when he got to the art therapist, she did it systematically. She got Rebecca involved in it systematically, and then that started to blossom again. And from a parent point of view, when you're with them so much, it's so fantastic to have this one person that comes in and picks up.
Sorry, I'm trying to laugh because all I can hear is the bird in the background, Mum.
Oh, sorry.
No, but I wanted to say the perfection kind of side of things I really resonate with, because there was no pressure, to what you were creating, to be perfect or to be really anything. And for me, being a perfectionist and being quite uptight and everything has to be a certain way, it helped me open up in general, not just with art, just in general, to be like, let go of that everything has to be the best of the best. Sometimes I would sit and I would have drawn a line and that was good enough. Emily would just be like, that's good for today. So it taught me that anything I actually do in life, it doesn't need to be like bang on perfect all the time. And I went into then studying more into an artistic side of things and being more open to like experimenting and not have to be so perfect. So I think that kind of thing that the child was saying, a lot of people will understand. And I think it's important as well that it's all right sometimes to not do something that's beautiful, or, you know, what somebody would stereotypically say art. So just thought I'd add that.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions? You could just maybe pop in the chat, so then I can see whether we need to highlight anybody if you'd like to ask a wee question. Oh, so Liz, do you want to maybe come off mute and then you can ask? That's it.
Yeah, hello. I just like to ask Rebecca what you're up to now, Rebecca. You look amazing and you look happy, and just wondered what's going on in your life now, what you're moving on to.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so I decided to, because my attendance was really kind of poor when I was ill in school, I had lost kind of fourth year, so that kind of side of exams were just kind of gone. But I managed to stick in fifth year and do my exams. I managed to get art, which was probably the only thing that kept me in school, to be honest. And I managed to leave with English, and I left the college, and makeup and the kind of artistic side of that was really kind of enticing for me. So I went and did some beauty courses in college and built my way up. Because I wasn't able to leave with hires, I had to kind of go the long way and build myself up. But now I'm currently studying HND level. I'm doing hairdressing and special effects and theatrical makeup. I'm just about to finish my first year. So that's really good. I was working for a big makeup company before COVID, but I've actually recently, when I lost that job, I went into care. So I'm a home assistant and work with all ages. And I think my experience at a young age, at 19, being able to do that job has really helped me. And I'm actually really loving it, helping people in the community, making a difference rather than just sitting at home and not doing anything. And I have my own flat. I'm happy with a partner. I have a dog, you know, like lots of things that are just great at the moment. And if you had told me this 2 years ago, I would not have believed you whatsoever, because life just looked pretty negative. But it's been a lot of hard work, don't get me wrong, but it's been worth it. And again, like I said, all the help I got and support helped me to be the person I am today. So yeah,
that's great. Good for you. That sounds, you've got a lot on. That's wonderful. That's really nice and positive to hear, especially about the dog. But that's just my thing. Fantastic. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. And I know we've got a comment there from Laura. Do you want to come off mute and say anything?
Sorry, I couldn't get the mute to go off there.
That's all right.
I think your story really resonated with me, Edda, the difficulties in finding the correct help that is just actually the key that's missing from the door. And once you find that one key, it suddenly doesn't open one door, but the whole pieces of the jigsaw puzzle finally fall into play. So thank you for sharing that, and I can relate to it so much. Yeah, just trying to get the right thing to open the new journey rather than feeling stuck in the same room. Thank you, and thanks, Rebecca. You, a credit to everybody.
Thanks, Laura. And Sarah, have you got a question there as well?
I was really struck, Rebecca, we sense from a lot of the young people that we encounter that there's an element of a childhood having been lost because they've had to have a maturity beyond their years to get through things. Do you feel that way, and how have you coped with that?
Yeah, massively. From the age of 9, I had to deal with really growing up very quickly, and I lost some crucial years that not so much I like miss or think back to now, but as a kid, just doing them mistakes or going out and being, a young teenager, I really missed out on them years that should have been what was my development. But to be fair, I think back and I'm like, if I didn't have to mature so early, I wouldn't be where I am at a young age now. So it's never kind of like I wish I could go back and change it, because in that moment, there was nothing I wanted more than to be somebody else or just not be in the situation I was. And I was always looking to the future. So one of the things that I really had to work on in art therapy was actually living for the now rather than the future. So in that moment, I hated everything that was going on. So I would go on to, when I'm like 25 and up, and I'll be like, when I have kids, when I, want a stability. It was a really hard process to try and bring back to the where I am now. And I still have, I still do that to a daily. I have to focus in on this day, focus what happened yesterday. Doesn't matter what happens tomorrow, just focus on how you are today. So I think that was a key thing as well. But it is really hard, majorly hard for somebody who just wants to be out with their friends, or just socializing, or just being silly like a young teenager should be, and having to deal with stuff so seriously. It's tough for anybody, but as I said, I think it brought me to the person I am today. So
thank you for that.
Right.
We have time for one more question. Yep, we'll go with it. So is it Nicole? I'm really sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Hello and thank you. Hello from Norway. So I was wondering if Rebecca could tell us a little bit more about the materials she would love to use, and if you have, Rebecca, you're remembering that you can be creative when you're facing difficulties in your life, so that your life is better.
Do you mean the materials I used within art therapy? Yeah. So usually, for me anyway, when everything was laid out on the table, like all the materials, that would actually be too much for me. I would find that quite overwhelming, and more likely than just blanket and just be like, I don't want to do that. So I think the session before, we used to think about what we would like to use. I remember I resonated very much with feathers I used to use to represent people. That was, for me, was like they were just kind of gentle, and they're a symbol of just kind of they're lovely. So I used them, and buttons we would use for points in my life. I loved, what are they? They're like pastels, and you could smudge them out. And I remember doing quite a few sunsets and that kind of thing. But not just pencils and paints, as I said, feathers and buttons and things that could represent a time in my life or what we were talking about. So they were really good, and sometimes good to just even hold during the session. So yeah.